Greetings, everyone. Welcome to session 3. And this is all about selecting an area. This is a part of the Commercial Mastery series, and I am Kevin Derrick. So welcome back. In module number 1, we gave you the foundation of commercial real estate, kind of gave you the who, the why, and the what. In the second module, we really targeted the difference of commercial and residential. I call it the power of commercial real estate. Well, now we really start putting some feet on the ground here. We're hitting the pavement running. And what we're doing now is taking that commercial real estate puzzle, now that we've got some edges down and our foundation down, and now we're starting to work into the middle. So let's talk about selecting the right area. First of all, people ask me this question more than any other question when it comes to area, and that is, Kevin, should I invest where I live or should I go somewhere else? And the best way for me to answer that question is to relate an experience that I had just a couple of years ago in a commercial convention. We were talking at a table with some guys on the very first night of the convention, and they were asking us, where do you typically invest? And so we were maybe bragging a little bit. We probably were prideful and kind of sharing, well, we're in this area, and we've targeted Kansas City, we're looking at Texas and that type of thing, and kind of just showing that maybe we were a little bigger than we really were, or something like that. And so the guys were just listening carefully and intently, and we thought, wow, these guys must be pretty impressed with our portfolio and everywhere that we've been. And when we got done talking, they looked at one another and then looked at us, and they said, well, can we ask you a question? We said, sure. Said, now you live in between Chicago and Milwaukee. We said, absolutely. So they said, now you can't find property close to you when you live in between Chicago and Milwaukee. You have to go every place else. And that really got us thinking. They were right. There's nothing wrong with going out of state, and some of you may need to do that. And for some of you, it might be very advantageous to do that. But depending on where you live, and if you live in an area where I live, you probably can select and choose a very good area for your initial investing in commercial. And so we took that to heart when those guys said that. And our philosophy is, what? Find where you live and just build an empire right there. I think the most successful people in commercial that I've met have typically done that. In fact, in the area where I live, there's a very intriguing guy, and his name is Chuck. And he's not real boisterous, doesn't talk a whole bunch, but he's very methodical in his approach in finding areas. And curiously enough, when he finds an area, he'll find out who the owner of the property is that he's interested in, and he'll call up that owner and introduce himself and say, you know what, I really like the property because I really like that area, and that's an area that I've selected to invest in, and I just wanted to let you know, I think your property is fantastic. Now, you're probably not interested in selling right now, but if you're ever interested, boy, I sure would love to talk to you about it. And you'd be amazed at how many times, either right then or just in the near future, there is dialogue, there is conversation between that current owner and my friend to see whether there's an opportunity for him to get into that property. So knowing where you want to be is critical. So do you invest out of state? Do you invest in state? Well, let's go ahead and focus on at least the areas where you live right now. You can apply these principles to other areas if you feel like it's necessary to do that. So what are the determining factors? Is it just price alone? Is it just location? Is it government? And the answer is yes. You want to take into consideration all of those elements. In fact, you probably want to go down and take a visit to your village hall. Make a visit there, talk to your government officials, whether it's city or village or township, incorporated, unincorporated. Find out where the plans are, not just for the next 12 months, but for the next 3 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and get a good feel for where the community is going, where the community is developing. You might find that there's some retail that's coming in, maybe an industrial park that's going to be built up, or maybe sections that have been definitely planned for by the local government to be apartments and multi-unit residential. And so they've done whatever they needed to do to zone them that way. So get a feel for what's going to happen as best you can in the next 3, 5, 10 years. Then we can start working on the things under our control. You see, I think that that's a very smart approach. Go ahead and get a feel for the things that are not in your control, so then you can start working on and focusing on the things that are under your control. Now, if you're familiar with residential, then you know typically we say that there are A, B, C, and D neighborhoods. Take your notebook, grab your pen, and write these down. And yeah, if you've done this before, write them down another time, because we've got a commercial twist to this that you need to know as you're investing in commercial real estate. Now, if you've heard the ABCD before, then you know typically the D areas are the rougher areas, right? These are the areas where there's very little owner-occupied property, probably no industrial, very little retail, very little office, mostly just residential. Certainly you're going to have apartment buildings, and but probably not big apartment buildings. You're going to have some quads and some 8s and some 10s, a lot of single family, but tougher areas. I have some folks who call them war zones. You'll have a lot of police activity, a lot of people there during the day. All signs, we all know what they are, of people who may be in the socioeconomics where it's just a little bit tougher for them right now. And so it's a D area. C area is an area that we will typically target. The C is kind of a mixture of occupied and non-owner occ. So I would say occ, non-owner occ. You've got a good mixture, and you have some retail coming in, maybe some mixed use, a corner bakery, corner grocery store, that type of thing. You've got some churches, you've got some schools. And so it's on the outskirts of a D, but intermingling with D and then the B area. And typically when folks talk about a B area, this is where you have some newer developments, maybe some very nice mature homes that people have maybe lived in for 10, 20, 30 years. They built them, they still live there. We would call this just signs of ownership and pride of ownership. You probably hear those phrases. All phrases that describe a B area where folks are very comfortable living. And you'll notice that there are traces of C sometimes in a B, and that just comes from sometimes you'll have somebody that moves in, and maybe they move in from a C area and that's what they're used to. But certainly in the C you would have more non-owner occ. Here you would have more owner occ. And then for the A, typically that's like a gated community, right? And the really nice developments, some people would say the doctors and the physicians live there, the lawyers, that type of thing. Now, I know a lot of lawyers that don't live in A property. I certainly know some that do. So it varies a little bit for the community, but that's a typical breakdown of A, B, C, and D. Now, here's the question. How does the A, B, C, and D relate to commercial real estate? Well, let me draw some additional lines here so you know what's going on. All right, let's draw a couple of lines here so we separate them a little bit, and then just an additional line right here. We're going to call this right here, we're going to call this appreciation. All right, and we're going to call this cash flow. All right, and the reason for that is that we want to build a grid here so that we understand where to target. We not only want to choose an area based on our comfort level, but we want to choose an area based on the parameters that we're looking for in our business, the yield, the cash flow, the appreciation, so that when we're analyzing something, we know exactly what we are doing. So right here, I want you to put an H, and just go ahead and write these letters as I do on this grid, and then I'll explain them in just a minute, okay? All right, you have H-A-A-L, all right, and then you have L-A-H and H. All right, now what do all of these letters mean? In the first category, we have appreciation. So what we're doing there is we're trying to calculate whether the A property, B property, C, or D property will appreciate and have high appreciation, average appreciation, or low appreciation. And here in this next category, will the cash flow typically be low, average, or high? So when you look at this down here, your D properties typically don't appreciate much at all, do they? But they can have high cash flow. Why? Because you have a lower purchase price, you're throwing minimal debt typically at the asset, and so your cash flow, your opportunity for yield is going to be greater. Okay, so you've got a higher cash flow. So if that's what you were targeting, then that would be interesting to look at that. You know, some people will say, no, I would never invest in a D area. Well, you know what? Some people do. Some people say, well, I would never invest in an A area. Well, some people do. So it's all about knowing what works for you in your situation, your goals, your business environment. Now, look at here in A, the appreciation is typically high. Well, of course it is. These are the nicer properties, and as the economy moves along, more opportunities for the property to go up in value. The cash flow, though, typically is minimal. Why? Higher purchase price, more debt placed against the opportunity, the cash flow is diminished. So what we typically say is, I would rather look at things in the middle where we have average to high. And if you look, here you've got an average appreciation in C, and you've got a high cash flow typically in C. So my recommendation is start looking at the C class properties. Now, here's the twist with commercial. Honestly, by definition, when you look at A, B, C, and D, it doesn't necessarily target where the property is. It's all based on rents. So an A-class property just means that it's attracting higher rents than a B-class property, and a B-class property is attracting higher rents than a C-class property. By definition, that's what it means. Now, in common sense, we understand why that happens. If an asset is attracting more rent for their units, then the age probably is minimal. So in other words, this property in the A-class is not as old as the B-class property. The A-class property probably has more amenities than the B-class property. And so it's kind of just a logical cascade from there. So target the rents, okay? And that's the important thing. And as you start selecting an area, look for rents as well as age of property and that type of thing. And we'll get into some of the property characteristics as we go through. Now, quickly, what we want to do is get a system so we know what we're looking for. We have to know what we're looking for when it comes to selecting an area. When we're selecting an area, focus on these two things, okay? Focus on numbers, the numbers of the property, and then focus on relationships. You want to focus on these two critical elements: numbers and relationships. We want our students, I want my students to fall in love with the numbers, not the properties. And remember, in commercial, it's all about a business. You're not just buying a property, you're buying a business. And so it has to be about the numbers. Now, quite honestly, you can select an area on your own, or you can bring in a team to help. I can't tell you how many times I've talked with folks who have said, you know what, I've read real estate books and I've listened to real estate tapes and I've seen some, incredible things in conferences, but I have trouble kind of getting started. And so I said, now, when you read the books and when you heard the tapes and when you did the conventions, and the conferences, did they ever talk to you about having people that can help you? And they said, oh yeah, the power team thing. And I said, well, I say, how's that going? And typically the response will be, well, I haven't really worked on that. Well, there's a reason. There's a reason why you'll read that and hear that and see that. And the reason is because it's true, is because it works. And commercial real estate is absolutely no different. Not only will our emphasis be on the numbers, but folks, it's all about relationships. In selecting an area, talk to other investors. Go to an investor meeting, go to a landlord meeting, get a feel for where the areas are, okay, that work for your business. What you'll find is that ultimately you're going to be aligned through relationships. Listen now, you will learn through relationships where you want to be, and you'll align that then with the numbers that you're targeting. It makes sense. It's a good formula. Real estate is all about having a system that works. Trust the system. There's a lot of emotion in this. There's a lot of emotion in any business. Certainly real estate is no exception, okay? So because of this emotion, man alive, am I messing up? Maybe I should do this over. And real estate is no exception, okay? So target these two elements. In the next session, the module is going to be all about finding properties. And quite honestly, there's two ways to do it. You can find them yourself, or you can get people to help you. I prefer the latter. Now, I will do my own searches as well, but I prefer having a team and having folks help me to get the properties that interest me and that I'm looking for. And we're going to go through all of the elements of that in session number 4. So, quick review, session 3, selecting an area, look at determining factors, do some studies, do some research. By the way, you might check out MarcusMillichap.com. That's MarcusMillichap.com. You can actually get a username and password. It's completely complimentary. Once you have your credentials, you can log back in and you can access reports for your area in all of the different sectors of commercial real estate, including a sector on storage units if that interests you. And those will be critical for you in being able to select an area. They'll give you demographics, they'll give you statistics, and all of the underlying criteria that will help you and me as investors with the determining factors of selecting an area. Then get a feel through your relationships about what numbers you're targeting, and then start with a B, C property and see where that takes you. Session 4, all about finding properties. Now, check out the website. Just take a couple of minutes, go find out more about the commercial real estate, mentorship opportunities. Love to be able to talk with you on the phone, set up a few days where I can come to your market, work together one-on-one to really maximize the opportunity for you to build a local real estate empire. You know what? You can take those guys' advice from the convention I attended a little while back. You can go out of your state and invest, or you can just build a small little kingdom or a big kingdom in real estate and profit from the commercial real estate in your area. We'll see you in module number 4, Finding Properties.